A man's peace is not merely a feeling. It is the foundational soil from which his entire life grows, his purpose, his confidence, his ability to lead and to love. To compromise this peace is not a simple negotiation. It is a slow spiritual erosion. The modern dialogue around relationships often champions forgiveness as the ultimate virtue, a blanket solution to all conflicts. We are told that to understand all is to forgive all, that holding a grudge is a weight on the soul. While there is profound truth in the power of forgiveness to free the individual, this concept has been dangerously twisted into a weapon of self-betrayal. It has been morphed into a demand for tolerance, a command to endure what fundamentally breaks the spirit under the guise of being the bigger person. But true strength is not found in limitless endurance. It is found in the wisdom to discern what must be endured and what must be rejected. It is the courage to declare that some acts are not mistakes to be understood, but choices that reveal character. And to forgive them is to willingly participate in your own diminishment. This is the critical fork in the road for every man. The moment he confuses forgiveness for acceptance, forgiveness in its pure form is an internal process of releasing anger for your own well-being, as it can and often should be done from a distance. Acceptance, however, is the act of allowing the behavior to continue, of staying in the environment where the poison still lingers. When you forgive a woman for a fundamental betrayal and then resume the relationship as it was, you are not practicing forgiveness. You are practicing acceptance. You are teaching her, in the clearest terms possible, that the cost of betraying you is zero. There is no consequence, only a temporary discomfort followed by a return to the status quo. This does not inspire change. It incentivizes repetition. It signals that your boundaries are flexible, your self-worth is negotiable, and your peace is available at a discount. This chapter outlines the specific acts that, when accepted, guarantee this slow death of the soul. These are not mere disagreements or human errors. They are the fundamental fractures in the foundation of respect, trust, and safety upon which any real connection must be built. The first and most critical of these acts is disrespect. It is the seed, tiny and often overlooked, from which the towering poisonous tree of all future betrayals grows. Disrespect is rarely a grand, dramatic declaration at the outset. It is a subtle test, a probing of the fences. It begins with a dismissive comment about your career ambitions, a sarcastic jab about your hobbies in front of friends, an eye roll when you express an opinion, or a casual interruption that signals your words hold little weight. In that moment, she is not merely expressing a bad mood. She is conducting a critical assessment of your boundaries. She is asking a silent, pointed question. What can I get away with? How much of his self-respect is he willing to sacrifice to keep me comfortable? The moment you excuse it, she's just stressed. She didn't mean it. I shouldn't be so sensitive. You have already answered that question. You have silently communicated that your self-worth is open for negotiation. And here is the cruel, paradoxical truth that many men learn too late. Women do not respect men who allow disrespect. They may stay with them, they may even enjoy the comfort and stability he provides. But the fundamental attraction, the primal respect for his strength of character, begins to wither. Forgiving consistent disrespect is not an act of love. It is an act of submission. You are submitting to a dynamic where you are the supplicant, and she holds the power to determine your emotional value. No man can lead a relationship, a family, or even his own life from a place of emotional submission. The respect you fail to demand is the respect you will never receive. The second unforgivable act is deception. Lies are not just false statements. They are the deliberate demolition of shared reality. Trust is the oxygen of a relationship. Without it, the connection suffocates and dies. It does not matter if the lie is about something seemingly small, where she was, who she was with, how she spent money, or a massive betrayal. The scale of the lie is less important than its intent. The moment she chooses to deceive you, she's making a conscious calculation. Her convenience, her image, desired outcome matters more than your right to the truth. She is placing her own comfort above the integrity of your bond. This is a profound act of emotional selfishness. When a man discovers a lie and chooses to forgive it without true, tangible accountability, which involves a full, unprompted confession, genuine remorse, and a demonstrable change in behavior, he becomes complicit in his own manipulation. He tells her that the bridge of trust, once burned, can be crossed on the flimsy raft of a simple "I'm sorry." But deception is not just about the words spoken. It is about the conscious effort to conceal, to create a false narrative for you to live in. If she can look you in the eye, claim to love you, and deliberately hide a truth she knows would alter your perception of her or the relationship, then you are not in a partnership. You are an actor in a play she is directing, and you haven't been given the real script. The hardest pill to swallow is that once the seal of truth is broken, it never fully mends. It can be patched, covered, and ignored, but it will always be the weakest point. Hate the crack that threatens to split open under the slightest pressure. Trust, once broken, only limps along, pretending to be whole. Third is the poison of emotional manipulation. This is a more insidious and sophisticated form of control than outright disrespect. It is the weaponization of your own empathy against you. This can take many forms: the guilt trip that makes you feel responsible for her unhappiness, the silent treatment used as punishment for a perceived transgression, the fake tears deployed to win an argument, or the weaponized vulnerability that forces you to abandon your own needs to cater to her manufactured crisis. A manipulative woman is a master of your emotional landscape. She knows which buttons to push, how to play the victim, and how to frame your entirely reasonable boundaries as a personal attack. Her goal is not mutual understanding or a fair resolution. Her goal is dominance. She wants compliance. The more you give in, the more you prove that her power lies in your emotional instability. A man's peace is sacred, a quiet center from which he can navigate a chaotic world. When a woman learns she can storm into that center, disturb that peace at will, and still be forgiven, she effectively owns your emotional state. Forgiving manipulation does not make you a kind or patient man. It makes you a predictable puppet. You teach her the exact sequence of pulls on your strings to get the desired performance. This predictability is the death of authentic masculine energy in a relationship, which is rooted in strength, stability, and leadership, not in reactive desperation. The fourth line that cannot be crossed is disloyalty. This extends beyond the physical act of cheating. It exists in the gray areas, the persistent, emotionally charged flirting with other men, the seeking of validation from strangers on social media, the sharing of intimate details of your relationship with a male friend, or the emotional investment in someone else that should be reserved for you. A woman who actively seeks the attention, validation, or emotional connection of other men while in a relationship with you is not lost or confused. She is calculating. She is leaving breadcrumbs for her next emotional high while ensuring you remain her safety net. Her plan B: the moment you forgive this form of betrayal, you send a catastrophic message. She does not see your forgiveness as a grand, loving gesture. She sees it as weakness. She observes that your love and commitment can be purchased with a few tears and a hollow apology, devoid of any real change in behavior. This makes you replaceable in her eyes. A woman only truly values what she fears to lose. Once she is certain that you will always be there, regardless of her actions, the final vestiges of respect evaporate. You transition from being a prize to be won to a convenience to be managed. Fifth, and equally corrosive, is public humiliation. When a woman chooses to disrespect you in the company of friends, family, or on the public stage of social media, the act itself is a declaration. It is not an accident born of anger. It is a calculated statement. It is her ego broadcasting to the world and to you a simple message: I do not fear his response. He will not do anything about this. She is leveraging social pressure, betting that you will be too embarrassed to conflict averse, too desperate to maintain harmony to confront her in the moment. The instant you laugh it off, make an excuse for her, or pretend it doesn't bother you, you have lost a critical battle in the war for your own dignity. You have publicly announced that her approval, her momentary goodwill, matters more than your own pride. Men who are truly respected by their partners are protected in public, not mocked. They are defended, not diminished. A woman who loves you will be the guardian of your image, your staunchest ally. She would never willingly damage your reputation for a cheap laugh or a moment of validation from others. To forgive public humiliation is to accept a life of quiet emasculation, where your social identity is one of a man who can be safely belittled by his own partner. This is a reality no man of substance can or should ever live with. Finally, and perhaps the most profound betrayal, is the weaponization of your vulnerability. There is a sacred contract in a healthy relationship. The trust that you can open the fortified doors of your inner world, your fears, your past pains, your deepest doubts and insecurities, and be met with safety and empathy. You are offering the unarmed parts of yourself, trusting she will not use them against you. When a woman takes this sacred offering and later uses it as ammunition in an argument mocking your past, leveraging your insecurities to win a point, throwing your trauma back in your face to prove she's right, she has committed an unforgivable act. This is not a failure of communication. It is a betrayal of the deepest kind. It reveals a character devoid of true empathy and integrity. This woman is not a partner. She is a predator of trust. She has taken the map of your soul you handed her and used it to find the most vulnerable places to strike. You should never have to defend your emotions against the person you shared them with. A woman who does this will never build you up. She will systematically feed on your weaknesses until there is nothing left but a hollow shell. Forgiving this behavior does not make you wise or magnanimous. It marks you as her next victim, willingly offering your neck to the blade you know she holds. Love without emotional safety is not love at all. It is the slow, methodical destruction of the soul, and no amount of forgiveness can repair the damage done when the sanctuary of trust has been so violently desecrated. These acts disrespect, deception, manipulation, disloyalty, public humiliation, and the weaponization of vulnerability are not mere arguments or flaws. They are fundamental choices. Each one is a clear signal. It's a flashing red light indicating that the foundation of the relationship is not just cracked, but poisoned. To forgive them in the context of continuing the relationship is to betray the most important person you are responsible for, yourself. It is the abandonment of your own sovereignty. Walking away from these behaviors is not an act of bitterness. It is the ultimate act of self-love. It is the declaration that your peace, your dignity, and your soul are not up for negotiation. It is the moment you stop forgiving what breaks you and start commanding a respect that is non-negotiable. A respect that forms the only possible foundation for a love that is real, strong, and enduring. The concept of forgiveness has been so romanticized, so stripped of its necessary context, that it has become a dangerous trap for the modern man. We are taught that to forgive is divine, that it is the hallmark of a strong and mature character. While this can be true and forgiveness is a personal, internal process of release, it becomes a form of self-sabotage when it is applied as a relational strategy for behaviors that shatter trust and respect. Most men never realize that their most well-intentioned act of grace forgiving a woman too quickly and without consequences, often the very thing that ensures their pain will be repeated. This is the central illusion of forgiveness. The belief that you are offering peace when you are actually devaluing it. When a woman crosses a fundamental boundary through disrespect, deception, or manipulation, and you respond with immediate forgiveness, you are not mending a bridge. You are removing the chasm that her actions created. You are robbing her of the natural, logical consequence of her choice. A consequence is not about punishment or revenge. It is the indispensable feedback mechanism of all life. It is the law of cause and effect in motion. If you touch a hot stove, you get burned. The pain teaches you not to do it again. In a relationship, when her betrayal is met not with a firm, recalibrating consequence, but with a swift, "It's okay, I forgive you," the lesson she learns is not about the wrongness of her action, but about the pliability of your boundaries. She learns that the stove, contrary to all logic, is not hot. She can touch it again without injury. You have made peace too cheap. You have made your continued presence in her life a given, constant that is unaffected by the quality of her character or the depth of her disrespect. Why would she change a behavior that carries no cost? You think you are showing the depth of your love by being understanding. But in reality, you are removing any and all incentive for her to value that love. You are teaching her, through your actions, that no matter what she does, you will always come back. This doesn't inspire gratitude. It breeds entitlement. It doesn't foster respect. It cultivates contempt. This dynamic creates a painful paradox that drains a man of his power and a relationship of its health. The more effort you put into a woman who has already demonstrated a lack of respect for you by explaining yourself more, by trying harder, by giving more affection in the hope of buying her loyalty, the less she values you. Your efforts, born from a place of fear and a desperate desire to stabilize the relationship, are perceived as what they are: desperation. She subconsciously interprets your increased investment. Following her transgression is proof that her power over you is absolute. Women are inherently attuned to a man's inner state. They can sense when his actions are driven not by confident, purposeful leadership, but by the anxiety of potential loss. This is the death knell for attraction. A woman may enjoy the security you provide, but she cannot genuinely desire a man whose center of gravity is her approval. By forgiving her disrespect at this critical stage, you only cement your position as the man she doesn't have to try for. You confirm that the bar for her behavior is on the ground, and she will never feel the need to rise to a higher standard. This is because a healthy feminine energy does not crave effortless domination. It subconsciously craves the challenge of earning a man's respect and presence. It is drawn to a man who possesses a core so solid that his peace and his principles are not negotiable. When you let her off the hook to isolate, when there is no period of distance, no recalibration, no demonstration that her access to you is a privilege contingent on her character, you remove that essential challenge. You make yourself a fixed, guaranteed feature in her life, like a piece of furniture. And without that challenge, without the need to earn and re-earn your respect, genuine attraction begins to wither and die. It is replaced by a comfortable familiarity, which eventually curdles into boredom and a lack of respect. The forgiveness you offered to keep her close becomes the very reason she drifts away. This is why the strongest, most transformative thing a man can do is to learn to forgive silently and never return. This is not about playing games or employing manipulative tactics. It is about a fundamental recalibration of your own worth. Real forgiveness does not require reconciliation. In fact, true forgiveness often cannot occur within the dynamic that caused the harm, as that very environment is what reinforces the toxic pattern. You can forgive a person in your heart, releasing the anger and the bitterness for your own peace, and still choose to never grant them access to you again. This is forgiveness for you, not for her. It is an internal declaration of freedom. Walking away with your dignity intact, with a calm and unshakable resolve, speaks louder than any pleading, any angry outburst, or any desperate "I forgive you" ever could. It communicates a finality that words cannot capture. It shows that your understanding of your own value has permanently shifted. You are no longer willing to fund a relationship with the currency of your self-respect. Too many men tragically confuse forgiveness with permission. They believe that by saying "I forgive you," they are clearing the slate and offering a fresh start. But in the context of a repeated, unaddressed betrayal, what the woman often hears is, "You have permission to do this again?" Your forgiveness becomes a green light, not a reset button. This confusion is what keeps men trapped in cycles of emotional abuse, hoping that their next act of grace will be the one that finally makes her see the light and change. But it never does. It only teaches her that your boundaries are suggestions, your self-worth is debatable, and your love is desperate. The moment you stop forgiving what should be unforgivable, you break this cycle. You stop playing the role of the merciful savior and start reclaiming your throne as a man who knows that his peace is the highest priority. You understand that forgiveness in its purest form is meant to free you, not to empower the other person to continue harming you. It is the ultimate act of self-love to look at a toxic dynamic, forgive it for the lesson it taught you, and then, with quiet determination, turn and walk in the opposite direction, toward a life where your peace is no longer a bargaining chip, but a non-negotiable foundation. The end of the old dynamic does not arrive with a dramatic explosion, but with a profound and unsettling quiet. It begins not in a shouted argument, but in a decision made in the deepest part of a man's being, a decision that is so final it no longer requires announcement. This is the genesis of the silent reclamation. It is the moment you stop explaining, stop negotiating, stop begging for a peace that the other person is intrinsically incapable of giving. You realize that your words have become worthless because they have been devalued through repetition and desperation. Your energy, once poured endlessly into the bottomless well of her chaos, is now withdrawn and redirected inward. This withdrawal is not a tactic. It is a transformation. It is the spiritual and emotional equivalent of a nation declaring sovereignty and pulling its resources back within its own borders to rebuild. This silence is your most powerful teacher and your most potent weapon. It is not the silence of suppression, where anger and hurt are bottled up to fester. That is a volatile silence, one that is waiting for an opportunity to erupt. Nor is it the silence of defeat, the numb resignation of a man who has given up. The silence of reclamation is something entirely different. It is the silence of command. It is the quiet that comes from a deep, unshakable knowing that the battle you are fighting was never worth winning, that the true victory lies in refusing to fight on that terrain altogether. When you stop reacting, you remove the fuel from her fire. A dynamic built on emotional provocation and dramatic feedback cannot survive in a vacuum. Your calm indifference becomes an impenetrable force field. She can no longer manipulate your responses because you are no longer giving them. She cannot read you because you have become still water, revealing nothing of the depths beneath. This creates a profound power shift, one that is felt long before it is seen. Your distance becomes a mirror, and in its reflection, she is forced to confront the consequences of her actions without the distortion of your emotional reactions. She may have been the one to block you, to leave, or to create the final crisis, expecting the familiar cycle to resume. Your panic, your chasing, your desperate attempts to re-establish connection. These reactions were the lifeblood of her ego, the proof of her control. But when the storm she created is met with an unnerving, vast calm, her entire framework for understanding the relationship shatters. The script she had written has been torn up. Your silence is not what she prepared for. In the void left by your absence, she is confronted not with your pain, but with her own. Your lack of pursuit does not signal that you do not care. It signals that you care more about your own peace than you do about her approval. This is a language she understands on a primal level. Her pride may have won the superficial argument, but in the quiet that follows, her heart begins to lose the war. You become the ghost she created but cannot forget. A presence defined by its absence, lesson she never intended to learn. As you solidify in this new state, a visible metamorphosis occurs. You are no longer the man who begged for clarity. You become the man who embodies it. This is not an act. It is the external manifestation of an internal recalibration. Your posture changes, carrying the weight of purpose rather than the burden of desperation. Your voice finds a lower, more certain register because your words are no longer pleas but statements. Your eyes hold a new stillness because they are no longer searching her face for validation. You carry with you the glow of a man who is healing, a quiet radiance that no filter can replicate and no new relationship can fake. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. You have found your rhythm again, a rhythm that beats to the drum of your own purpose, completely independent of her presence or absence. You stop giving energy to what drains you and start systematically feeding what grows you. The gym becomes a sanctuary of discipline, not just a place to vent frustration. Your work becomes a channel for your focus, not just a distraction from the pain. Your solitude transforms from a sentence of loneliness into a sacred space for rebuilding. In this silence, you reclaim your throne. The throne is not a position of dominance over her, but of sovereignty over yourself. You are no longer playing emotional chess with someone who doesn't even know the rules. You have simply stood up from the board and walked away. You become untouchable, not through aggression or walls of bitterness, but through an unassailable inner discipline. You realize, with stunning clarity, that closure was never something she could give you. Closure had always been a function of your own acceptance. The need for an explanation, for a final conversation that would make sense of the senseless, for an apology that would validate your pain, all of it was a form of begging. You are still seeking a form of permission to move on from the very person who caused the injury. True closure is an inside job. It is the decision that you have all the information you need. The information is her actions, her patterns, the consistent disregard for your peace. You no longer need her to admit the truth. You simply need to accept it yourself. Your peace, your newfound stillness, your purposeful life, these become the only explanation you will ever need. This journey of silent reclamation is the ultimate correction. It is you returning home to yourself after a long exile. It is the process of taking all the energy, attention, and love you had poured outward into a broken vessel and pouring it back into the foundation of your own being. The man who emerges is not harder, but sharper, not distant, but discerning. He understands that his greatest power does not lie in controlling others, but in mastering his own responses. He has learned that sometimes the loudest statement, the most powerful lesson, and the most profound form of respect you can give yourself is delivered not with a shout, but with a quiet, unwavering, and final silence. The pain does not vanish. It does not simply fade away like a forgotten memory. Instead, it undergoes a profound and essential alchemy. The raw, screaming agony that once threatened to shatter you slowly cools, hardens, and becomes the unshakable foundation upon which a new man is built. This is the great transformation. The fire that burned you is the same fire that forges your strength. The period that follows the silent reclamation is not an empty void of absence, but a fertile ground of purification. It is the essential solitary workshop where you, the architect of your own ruin, must now become the master builder of your own redemption. This is not about moving on. It is about building upward from the ashes. The kingdom she tried to destroy through chaos and disrespect was always yours to begin with. And now, in the quiet, you reclaim every stone, laying them with greater intention and wisdom than before. This rebuilding is an active, deliberate process. The energy that once flowed outward in a desperate, futile torrent, the energy spent analyzing her motives, pleading for change, and managing her emotions, is now dammed and redirected. This reservoir of focus becomes your most valuable resource. You channel it into the gym, where the burn in your muscles is no longer about punishing a body you felt had failed you, but about sculpting a vessel worthy of the spirit it carries. Each lift, each mile run, is a physical testament to your discipline, a tangible repudiation of the powerlessness you once felt. You pour this energy into your craft, your career, your mission. The work that might have once been a mere distraction becomes a channel for your purpose. You find a new depth of concentration, a sharper clarity, because your mind is no longer partitioned, with a portion of your consciousness perpetually monitoring her emotional weather. The mental real estate she once occupied is now free, and you develop a newfound capacity for focus, strategy, and genuine creativity. You begin to read again, not to escape your world, but to better understand and command it. You consume knowledge not as a diversion, but as fuel for your evolution. The man who emerges from this disciplined reinvestment is calmer, quieter, and more grounded. His presence carries a new weight, not because he is trying to be imposing, but because he is no longer emotionally scattered. He's integrated. This is not a performance for an audience. It is the natural, inevitable result of a man who has chosen, day after day, to invest in himself. With this integration comes a radical shift in perspective. You begin to see the entire relationship not as a catastrophic loss to be mourned, but as a necessary, if painful, curriculum. It was the crucible required to burn away the weaker, more naive parts of yourself. It incinerated the desperate need for external validation, the fear of being alone that kept you compliant, the tragic confusion that mistook tolerance for love, and pain for passion. The woman you thought you needed was never your destiny. She was a mirror, a harsh and unforgiving one, sent to show you with brutal clarity all the places where you had abandoned yourself. She reflected back the softness of your boundaries, the gaping hole in your self-worth that you were asking her to fill, and your willingness to trade your power for the illusion of connection. This realization is the awakening that most men never reach, preferring to stay trapped in the comfortable victimhood of blame. But you, by facing the fire, understand that while she was responsible for her actions, you were responsible for tolerating them. This is not self-blame. It is self-empowerment. It is the recognition that you hold the pen to your own story, and you will never again write yourself as a supporting character in someone else's drama. This awakening is the path to emotional sovereignty, the ultimate prize of this entire harrowing journey. Emotional sovereignty is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of it. It is the ability to remain the calm, centered eye of your own hurricane, no matter who comes or goes, no matter what storms rage around you. Your emotional state is no longer a puppet whose strings are pulled by another's words, actions, or withdrawals. You become the source of your own validation, the anchor of your own peace. A woman's affection becomes a welcome addition to your life, not the sole source of its light. Her disapproval becomes her opinion, not your crisis. This is the core of true, unshakable masculinity. It has nothing to do with dominating others, and everything to do with mastering the universe within yourself. The man who achieves this does not need to proclaim his strength. It is evident in his unflappable calm, his measured responses, and his refusal to be drawn into battles that are beneath his dignity. As this sovereignty solidifies, the final remnants of resentment toward her begin to dissolve. You stop seeing her as a villain who maliciously set out to destroy you, and you start to understand her as an unconscious, a broken individual who simply did not know how to handle the depth, honesty, and stability you offered. To her chaotic spirit, your calm felt like boredom. Your integrity felt like judgment. Your strength felt like a threat. So, she did what unconscious people do. She sabotaged it. She created drama to feel alive, and tested your boundaries to feel a sense of control, all to avoid confronting the emptiness within herself. When you think of her now, you don't feel the old, hot surge of anger. You feel a distant, almost philosophical gratitude. You are grateful not for the pain, but for the clarity it forced upon you. You are grateful for the redirection. Her rejection was not a door slamming shut, but a necessary shove away from a path that led to a cliff's edge. Her absence was not a vacuum, but the very space required for you to finally meet the strongest, most authentic version of yourself. You become living proof that a man's greatest transformation does not occur when he wins a woman's love, but when he survives the loss of it, and in that survival, learns to love himself with a depth and ferocity that she could never have matched. The man who enters this chapter is broken. The man who exits it is rebuilt, not as he was, but as he was always meant to be. He has been tempered by the fire. The memory of the pain is now woven into the very fabric of his strength, a permanent reminder of the cost of self-betrayal and the incalculable value of the peace he now carries within. He is not just healed, he is upgraded. He has not just moved on, he has evolved. The culmination of this arduous journey is not merely a change in circumstance, but a fundamental shift in your very frequency. The world begins to interact with you differently because you are, in essence, a different man. The energy you once emitted a signal of neediness, desperation, and negotiable boundaries has been replaced by a broadcast of quiet assurance, discernment, and unshakable peace. This new signal acts as a powerful filter, a force of nature that repels the toxic and attracts the nourishing. You are no longer a participant in the chaotic dance you once knew. You have become the still center around which a new, more harmonious reality begins to orbit. This is the phenomenon of divine subtraction. Life, in its infinite wisdom, systematically removed the people, patterns, and attachments that were incompatible with the man you were destined to become. The loss you mourned was not a punishment, but a necessary clearing, making space for what was always meant to be yours. This new reality is governed by a peace that is not passive, but powerfully discerning. You no longer chase connection out of a void within yourself. That emptiness has been filled with your own purpose, your own discipline, your own self-respect. Consequently, your approach to relationships transforms entirely. You are no longer a pursuer, but a magnet. You do not seek to win people over. You allow them to reveal themselves, and you observe their character with the patience of a scholar studying a text. You understand that words are the cheapest currency in the human exchange. You now listen to energy, watch for patterns, and let the uncompromising passage of time reveal the truth of a person's character. You have outgrown the need to decode mixed signals because you now understand a fundamental truth. Confusion is not a puzzle to be solved. It is the deliberate tool of the uncommitted and the emotionally immature. Clarity, you have learned, is the native language of the strong and the self-possessed. The weak will misinterpret your discernment as coldness. The manipulative will label your boundaries as distance. But the right woman, the one who possesses her own inner peace, a deep well of empathy, and a self-awareness that allows her to take accountability, will recognize your energy not as a threat, but as a sanctuary. She will call you safe. She will respect your silence, not because she fears it, but because she understands its value. She will not seek to control your energy, but will crave it, because she recognizes in you a complementary force, a fellow sovereign who requires no taming. You become living proof of a profound paradox. Losing everything you thought you needed is the very event that sets you free to receive what you truly deserve. A man who has come to know his own value on this intimate level no longer fears solitude. In fact, he begins to cherish it, for it is in that quiet space that he connects with his purpose and replenishes his power. His greatest fear is no longer being alone, the far greater tragedy of wasting his precious energy time, in essence, on those who are incapable of recognizing his worth. This is the ultimate freedom, the liberation from the desperate need for external validation. As you solidify in this state, the world responds in kind. You begin to attract a completely different caliber of people and opportunities. Peaceful, purposeful individuals are drawn to your grounded energy. Opportunities that align with your genuine growth and values seem to present themselves with a new synchronicity. You are no longer forcing outcomes or clinging to relationships that require constant repair. You are simply operating from your core, and the universe mirrors that coherence back to you. The people who once overlooked you, who took your presence for granted, may now glance in your direction with a quiet, unspoken regret. You become a walking lesson, a testament to what they let slip through their fingers, not because you are perfect, but because you have become a man whose peace is independent of their approval. In the end, you arrive at the most liberating realization of all. She was never the loss. She was the lesson. Her role in your life was not to be your ultimate destination, but to be the crucible that forced your evolution. The pain was the price of admission to a higher level of self-understanding. The heartbreak was the chisel that carved away your naivete, revealing the sharper, more resilient contours of your character. The silence you endured became the fertile ground where your true strength took root. The man who emerges from this journey carries a quiet dignity that does not need to be announced. His growth is not something he talks about. It is visible in the calm assurance of his gaze, the deliberate purpose in his step, and the settled stillness of his spirit. His eyes tell a story of a man who has been burned in the fires of betrayal and blessed by the same flames. He is calm in situations that would have once destroyed him, not because he doesn't feel, but because his inner foundation is now engineered to withstand the tremors. This is the essence of true, grounded masculinity. It is not loud or performative. It is anchored. He is no longer trying to prove he is strong. He simply is. And when the nights are quiet and he reflects on the path he has walked, he will smile. Not because the journey was painless, but because the pain no longer controls him. He remembers the man he was lost, begging, desperate for a love that was killing him, and he feels a profound pride for the man who chose to stop. He has mastered the most difficult art of all, the art of letting go without ever losing himself. This is the quiet victory. Every strong man eventually earns the ability to love deeply, lose completely, and still rise, not with bitterness, but with a peace that is more powerful than any love that ever demanded the death of his dignity.